The key to any super app or platform is trust. And I would really, really focus on ensuring that the people on the platform are trusted. What I mean by that is, are they who they say they are? And are you guarding your platform against abuse from unregulated content or non-real people? Because I think that is really the thing is a downfall for any super app or any kind of social media platform or any two-sided marketplace.
Welcome to the Peak IDV Executive Series video podcast, where I speak with executives, leaders, founders, and changemakers in the digital identity space. I'm your host, Steve Craig, founder and chief enablement officer at Peak IDV. For our audience, this is a video first series, so if you're enjoying the audio version, please check out the video recording on executiveseries.peakidv.com, where you can watch the full episode, read the transcript, and access any of the resources from today's conversation. I am super excited for this week's episode, as I have the distinct privilege of speaking with Steve Munford, President and CEO of Trulioo. Trulioo is known as the world's identity platform. Trusted by leading companies for their business and person verification capabilities, they combine state-of-the-art technology with expert verification knowledge across diverse markets to offer expertise and solutions in KYB, KYC, AML, watchlist screening, and more. Steve is described as a product-oriented CEO and has been leading Trulioo since March of 2020. He is a highly accomplished executive, having served as CEO and or board member on a number of enterprise software and cybersecurity firms, including leading companies like Absolute Software, Carbonite, and Sophos. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for making the time to be on the podcast.
Thanks, Steve. Really good to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's get started. I'm confident that the audience of this podcast has heard of Trulioo, but for those that haven't, how would you describe your company? What's your general elevator pitch?
And we've been on this mission to create the world's identity platform. And it's really under this belief that all goods and services will be offered digitally at some point, and bring a fair and just society. We need to give access to all 8 billion people in the world. We have an identity solutions today that's used by some of the leading payments, marketplaces, financial services, crypto, and other digital first platforms. Our mission is to make them able to reach all 8 billion people in the world.
Phenomenal. And I recall when you rolled out that new slogan, the world's identity platform, I think that was early 2023. What does it take to be the world's identity platform? Like, what's your global footprint?
It takes time. Today, we cover about 195 countries. We have about 450 different data sources we bring together for PII matching. We cover, I think it's about 13,000 document types. We have 700 million businesses that we can access. And so what that means is, with our global customers, I was on the call with one of them early this morning. They're using us in 70 different countries. And for them, it's a single API that they connect and do the verification in 70 countries. But as they look at adding the next 10 countries, that's how we partner with them to ensure that they can meet their needs as they go about their global expansion.
That's great. That's great. You mentioned how long you've been in the market. I've been following Trulioo for many years. And I remember back in the early days, you're focused on being a global identity data gateway. What are your core pillars in your product stack these days?
Yeah. So we started off by recognizing the gap between data was regionalized and you needed to bring it together on your single API, but also you had to do a lot of work to make data be able to be consumed because it's different formats, different character sets, different languages. And so you have this whole challenges when people submit information, doing the proper matching. So that's the root of what we do, and still a big part of our business today. But probably saw was large customers and even medium and small customers were knitting together point solutions or siloed solutions to complete the identity onboarding process. And that wasn't efficient, both from our resourcing, but also from our results. So, we moved from PII on people to doing KYB, again, responding to some of the needs of our customers, and then adding in document biometrics, ML watch list. And then the last piece was building under one platform and an orchestration layer.
You personally joined about 4 years ago, March 2020. When you joined, it was right at the beginning of a global pandemic, which is always a great time to join a new company. Can you take me back to your initial ramp in those early days as the new CEO of Trulioo and what that was like?
Yeah, that was crazy times, and yeah, it seems like longer than 4 years ago, but, I had a chance to meet, we were very Vancouver central that time, so I had a chance to meet people in the office back in February. But yeah, my first day in the office was, April 1st, and it was in my basement in the home office. And, I would say it was challenging, getting to know people. I had been in security, as you pointed out earlier. So understanding the identity market, the nuances of it, learning about the product, connecting with customers, all somewhat challenging over COVID. And then you compounded on that. We had a number of customers that were in travel marketplaces. So you have this real change in our revenue streams and broad uncertainty and again learning a bunch of new products. So yeah, it's challenging, but it was exciting.
Yeah, the environment was very dynamic. I was at a solution provider at the time, and it wasn't clear what direction this was going to go. The lockdowns were coming. We didn't quite understand the virus. But then for the identity market, as we closed out 2020, we went into 2021, things started to change. How did your perspective on the market opportunity change and vary, 6 months in as you went into 2021?
Yeah. So what we saw with COVID is the acceleration of things going digital, right? So we had everything from like taxpayers that were used to do their verification in person with physical documents go digital. We had the whole online trading explosion and the meme stock, which all drove a lot of customer acquisition by those platforms. And again, we were able to slot into that trend and powered so many of them. I always remember the day of the GameStop stop trading, that whole market disruption. We had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of new accounts being opened across multiple different platforms. So it was dynamic. And then crypto was the great accelerator for digital identity. It was, I think if I talked to any other CEOs, it was a time where crypto was all about onboarding the next new user, big investments, big acceleration of going global. So it was a phenomenal year, 2020, when it just was real rocket ship for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about 2021, a lot of the companies that would use these services, fintechs, cryptos, marketplaces, they were all getting massive amounts of venture capital as everyone was going digital. And then about a year after you joined, you raised 394 million, which brought Trulioo to unicorn status. During that time, there were a lot of investments in identity verification, biometrics, related technologies, seed investment, but also more mature rounds. I'm sure you could have chosen from a lot of different investors. Why did you choose the company TCV as your lead investor? Can you talk about that relationship?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we're fortunate. We're seeing really strong growth. We had a strong balance sheet, or a good balance sheet for more standards, and so we didn't need to raise money. But my mom always told me, "Eat when served," and it was a market that it was a good funding environment. And at that point, we started to really latch on to this role we could play as a global identity platform, and we realized that was going to take a lot of investment in product, potentially some M&A. So it was the right time to raise money. You're right. We had a lot of inbound interest. TCV was interesting because they had educated themselves about the market, about us, well before they called us. Many of their investments were actually customers of ours. So that's really helpful, right? So when someone shows up and say, "Hey," or of your top 10 customers, we've invested in a large number of them, and we've talked to them, and we understand why you're special. That means it's an intelligent investor, and there's synergies between how they look at the market, their customers, and even some of our prospects were portfolio companies. That plus, I'd known them from the security space for 15 years, so I had a great respect for the platform and the people there. So from them, very smart capital that could give us access, help us with customer acquisition, but more than that, to partner and really share the same vision of what we could do, what was needed in the market.
Great. I often work with investors in my role within Peak IDV, and I love when they're really curious about the space. They want to understand the use cases and the market opportunities, and they can see through short-term trends and long-term opportunities. I'm curious about one of the things that happened after that, which was another year, which was an acquisition. You had purchased HelloFlow, which was a no-code orchestration startup. Can you talk about what drove that acquisition, that decision?
Our thesis was the identity market was full of siloed solutions, right? So, and even that was the case for us. We had great ability to do person match EIDV matching on individuals. We had business matching capabilities, and we had document verification capability, but they were separate solutions. So if the customers wanted to use them, they would integrate it three different ways, three different structures. And that really wasn't compelling. And what we heard from people is they wanted the ability to orchestrate their whole identity workflow, ideally with one vendor, and get to this point of lowering the cost of verifying a good user. And so we went about saying, hey, could we build it ourselves? What platforms are out there? Really like the technology that HelloFlow built, very modern, and we could envision how we could put all our capabilities under it. And it was a very young company, so we weren't dealing with 10 years of legacy code or 10 years of large customers on it that we'd have to figure out how we're going to mash it all together. We bought it both because it was part of our vision, but also the purity of the technology and how we could create one platform, one eloquent platform with their technology. So when we bought it, we virtually stopped selling it. Didn't re-architect, but we put all our tech stack underneath it. And a year later, we brought together the Trulioo identity platform. And that really was the birth of what we now call the world's identity platform.
That's great backstory. I anticipate more acquisitions in the space. I actually think there will be consolidation in the year. There was a big one that happened just recently from a document-centric provider. But integrating companies, merging stacks, and all that is really tough work. What's your approach to M&A? You sort of alluded to it a little bit with the pause on sales, but how do you combine cultures and technologies and then sort of reemerge for go-to-market?
So I spent 25 years in IT security, was part of a lot of acquisitions. I think at Sophos, I led 6 of them. What you learn over the years is for a hard problem, and I put security and identity in this, that the most important thing is, especially a problem that you're solving for large customers, requires high performance. You really got to focus on the tech, and you got to focus on, the product market fit, the tech, and how you can build one platform. Too often what you see in M&A is you end up with these two companies that talk about a vision of a combined solution, but they never really come together. So there's really no advantage for the customer. So we're very much a tech product focused M&A and not so much a revenue market reach M&A company. So we're not trying to consolidate a market for financial engineering. We're trying to build a platform with great technology. So our approach is very much a tech focused, and it's really, technology that can help accelerate our platform strategy. So I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot more M&A in the market. I think some of it could be for financial engineering. Some of it could just because some investors are tired and it's time to get out of it. And some of it will be to build great products, and we're going to be that one.
You made a good point about the customer experience from an integration. And I've seen some very large companies in the space start to roll out various signals and features. But then what I've heard from the practitioners is it's then challenging to integrate. They're not rationalized. There's no interoperability. They're dealing with different groups. They're dealing with different APIs and documentation. And at the end of the day, they're not really getting that benefit of that holistic experience. So I've certainly seen that. One of the things you mentioned just now was about your business entity verification, business onboarding, KYB. Is that something that you're building out internally, or was that related to HelloFlow?
So we actually, just back to your previous comment, anytime you hear the word roll up, it just kind of like sends bristles up. Nothing good happens with a tech roll up for the customer. It may be good for financial engineering. So I echo your comments there. So KYB is, we are providing data data services for KYB. What we realized is that it's a workflow problem. So if you think about the steps to onboard a business, and say you're a marketplace, you've got to start with who's submitting that application. How do I validate that they're a real person? And then you get into the layers of understanding the business all the way through to onboarding that business. So KYB is actually a workflow problem with a lot of data behind it and a lot of risk signals that you fold into it. So we kind of with HelloFlow, we got the workflow capabilities, and then underpinning that is our roots in data acquisition. And then since then, we've really accelerated our innovation. We're now direct to most government sources on companies, which is really important. We've got this mission to tackle the long tail, which is really the challenge of KYB. It's not hard to validate Microsoft, but it's exceptionally hard to validate the small person that's maybe participating in the gig economy. So it's actually a fascinating problem, but it's a workflow problem, and it's multi-layered, a little more complex than individual verification.
Certainly, KYB is broader with just business entity verification. How do you see the global market for that problem evolving?
Yeah, so today, you kind of have legacy providers like Dun and Bradstreet that again, I think they're very focused on the larger companies, and so they have some elements of it. They don't necessarily, or a lot of the legacy providers don't really have the real time capabilities and can't necessarily meet all the new regulation requirements. Very few are global, right? So there's a lot of people trying to solve business verification in the U.S. or maybe in the U.K., but very few are global. So in fact, I think we're quite unique on that. We would say business verification is still largely a unsolved problem on a global basis. We think we're doing quite a good job, but there's more room to go, and especially around again that long tail, and then how we can start to layer in risk signals and other information to help with that onboarding process. And we work with some of the largest marketplaces, payment providers, and we certainly hear their challenges, and we're just continuing to partner with them on solving them.
I'm hearing a lot in the market about business identity theft or business impersonation. What are you hearing from your customers when it comes to attacks versus like the onboarding and compliance? Like, what's the impact?
Yeah, so the very nature of business information is public, right? So if I want to put a product on a marketplace and try to get credit and try to scam either customers or the marketplace itself, I can take the information of the business, sign up and get on the marketplace and even start to do some activities of a business I don't know. That's the challenge for marketplaces. And what it needs to start with is who is submitting that information and how do I validate that's a valid person that's connected with that marketplace. And once I do that, then I can start to go through my business onboarding process. So there's a lot more focus on, if you will, the submitter and how do I validate that it's truly someone part of that company? And then how do I look for risk signals on how long has that business entity been around? Where are things like the IP address and some of the signals that can start to tell me it's just likely that business that's happening. And then you're starting to see people really think about a layered, how much trust do I give that business day one? How much trust do I wait and give it? But doing business verification is key to any of these two-sided marketplaces, gig economies. And yeah, there's a lot of focus on it.
Some of the companies in the market, identity verification companies specifically, have focused really on onboarding, KYC, more getting into KYB. But some have also invested in authentication or re-verification or biometric plays around that. And sometimes that's R&D, sometimes that's an acquisition. Do you see convergence of those use cases with for that day one interaction with a new business or person?
Yeah, we see at this point we see partnering opportunities with people that do the authentication, and we have some of our customers leading us in that direction. It's authentication is different than verification, and most companies think about them as two different steps. But I do see them connecting, and I think one of the areas that we keep hearing about is account takeover, right? So, what are the signals that we are seeing in the onboarding process, and what are the signals that could help predict or alert people about account takeovers. And so there's a lot of interaction going on in data there. And again, we're talking to some of our largest customers a way that we can support that.
Another common theme is this concept of reusable or portable identity. Do you see convergence connected to the onboarding experience, like a verify once?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're just seeing this growth of wallets, whether those are government wallets, government identity schemes. We're seeing a lot of that in Europe, some in Asia. We're seeing private wallets. And we see that as all different pieces of an identity platform. So just like we'll look at 450 different data sources or different document types, we're launching our government what we call EIDs connected to government identity program. So we see that as all components of a platform. No one solution is going to fit everybody. And certainly what we hear from our large customers is that they do not want to go around and integrate with every different government scheme or every different private scheme. So again, we think that accelerates the need for an identity platform, but it's just different attributes, different techniques that are going to be used in the future.
Yeah, I've seen websites where they've decided to integrate almost every single federated login option there is, and you as a consumer, like, which of these do I pick? And that's it's tough work to do. And then I think it'll be similar when we talk about verified identity. Like, consumers can get confused by all the different options. No, I want to segue a little bit into other trends and convergences. You've mentioned marketplaces a few times, and that's an area that you're focused on. I'm seeing this trend of traditionally unregulated companies that aren't under the banner of like financial services that haven't had a KYC requirement, that maybe they've been doing it, but not calling it KYC, doing more of these KYC like approaches. They're doing watch list screening now. They're awakening to the importance of a document verification and biometrics. What do you think the industries that haven't been doing these things can learn from their peers in banks and in financial services?
Yeah, they're learning that the establishment of trust is critical if you're going to have a marketplace, especially two-sided marketplaces. I think any unregulated industry that is doing any kind of payout or transfer of money will realize that at some point there'll be some regulation that will come. So there's both a combination of kind of risk and safety, reputation, and then this notion that regulations could come is having them look at how do I learn from more of the regulated industries, and maybe not learning from a traditional bank, but more looking at digital first, whether it's payments. Payments is, I think, a good example. Crypto got there very, very quickly, online betting, and other industries that were regulated, but really wanted to have low friction onboarding process. I think they're looking at that.
Yeah, it feels like it's reached more of a fever pitch with everyone doing digital now and all of these marketplaces that have cropped up. So I've certainly been hearing about it more and more.
Especially when you see governments talking about the need for, whatever content or whatever, social platforms to really start to think about how do they control who's on the platform and verify that they're real people participating in whatever type of platform they're on. So it's not only marketplaces, but it's also other social platforms.
So, and just to segue a little bit, in researching your background, I want to talk about this other emerging trend around super apps. And I see you're a Queen's University MBA alum, and I know another alum, not personally, but I've heard of Mr. Elon Musk. Elon purchased Twitter. He renamed it X, and he's evolving it into a super app. And I've often seen him on stage where he references what they've done in China and other countries. If you were to join the X board, what kind of advice would you give on these topics to the company on that evolution?
Yeah, I don't think he actually graduated from Queens. I think he visited Queens or went there
He
for a
stopped
bit.
by.
So I think he did some courses there. Yeah, an impressive background. I think, the key to any super app or platform is trust. And I would really, really focus on ensuring that the people on the platform are trusted. And what I mean by that is are they who they say they are? And are you guarding your platform against abuse from unregulated content or non-real people? Because I think that is really the thing is a downfall for any super app or any kind of social media platform or any two-sided marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, the global perspective is hard to take in when you're not a user of those technologies in other countries. And you hear about them, and you think, well, why can't we do this here? And there's different regulations, there's different political environments, there's different economic engines. I know your roots are based in Canada. You're Vancouver right now, but you've lived and worked all over the world. And Trulioo has a global workforce. How do you think your position in being in Vancouver in that ecosystem has impacted how you think globally, your company and culture?
Yeah, so Vancouver is very multicultural, and so within Vancouver, there's a strong Asian community, there's a strong European community, and Canada itself is not a large market, so there's just this very by nature. If you're a Canadian business, you think globally if you're going to be a company of scale. I would say we've been able to get great talent that really identifies with our mission. Interesting enough, our Dublin office was started by a Irish individual that was in Vancouver, tech person that worked here from the very beginning of the company, and then wanted to go home. So he formed the basis of our Irish office. I think at one point we were almost 10% of our employees in Vancouver were Irish. And then similarly in Asia, one of our long-standing star employees was from China, and he wanted to go back to Asia. So he then returned to open up our Singapore office, and we've been building around him there. So it's just been, it was wonderful to see this talented multicultural workforce with this global ambition connected to the mission. And then they start to spread out around the world. It's great.
I think it's really important in this market, if you're in digital identity or identity verification, to have representation in the markets and countries you serve. So you have a better gauge on the culture. So that's phenomenal. Well, Steve, we're coming up on time. I'd love to hear what your vision for Trulioo is for this next year and maybe beyond that, a few years out, maybe through the rest of the 2020s.
Yeah. So I'll talk a lot internally about we're on a journey, right? And when you solve a hard problem like digital identity, you can be assured that it's never fully solved, right? It's one of those problems that what you need to do to verify someone will always be changing. You're going to have bad actors trying to figure out how to get around that. You're going to have or customers changing the needs, and then you have regulation changing. So as we go forward, what we believe is that the platform will be the basis of which we can solve those changing needs. And our role really is to work with our large customers and new large customers to help us stay ahead of what is required, whether that's for trust and safety, as you talked about, or for regulations or for fraud. And so you're going to see us talk a lot more about fraud in the future. You're going to see us connect our products together for more seamless onboarding. And you're going to see us embrace things like government ID schemes. And then again, 2 or 3 years from now, what we need to do to stay ahead and help our customers will change. So we're not a company that's here today and gone tomorrow. We're not building to sell next year. We're building to solve this problem, and we take a very long-term view of that.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, before we close out on today's conversation, if you've seen any of these episodes of Executive Series, I'd like to go a little bit beyond the LinkedIn profile and share more about the person behind the press release. And I did some research, and I see you're director at Covenant House in Vancouver, and you're also a board member on Social Venture Partners. I'd love to hear more about those organizations and the work that you do there, Steve.
Yeah. So thank you for noticing that. I've been in tech for a long time and been able to benefit from that, and strong believer in giving back, and especially in your community. I've always had my wife and I have always had an interest in youth at risk or children at risk. And so we focus both our giving and our time is supporting those causes. My wife's a teacher. She does it in that way. But if you look around town, we're very thoughtful about how we give both time and money. Covenant House is a wonderful organization. They've been around for 30 years, and we have a huge homeless issue here in Vancouver, and they've got a really good history and capacity to help that. and kind of investing and supporting them is a small piece that I could do. So, but yeah, that's just kind of who I am. And yeah, truly, we also try to do our part of giving back. We provide scholarships to youth that may otherwise don't go to university, and we provide co-ops and internships for students like that as well, and then also mentorship programs. So it's part of our culture.
That's wonderful, Steve. Thank you for sharing the background on that. Well, as we get to the close of today's conversation, for those that are watching or listening, maybe reading the transcript, what types of conversations are interesting to you or to members of the Trulioo team?
Yeah, certainly we listen pragmatically. We're very focused on understanding regulations, growing trends, and identity, and then beyond that, personally, certainly staying up to speed on current events, which there's a lot to digest these days. And then, yeah, just very eclectic group of historical podcasts that I'll personally listen to. But I'm a huge fan of podcasts. I think that's one of the things that pandemic taught me was the just how rich podcasts are, and how you can really enhance a walk or a workout or other things by listening to good podcasts. So thanks, Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I've really focused on video editions. There's audio and video because I feel like when you're having a video conversation, people can get to know you better. They look how you speak and they feel like they know you, and then in turn they know your company. And I think that's a great thing. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you've got a lot on your plate, very busy. I look forward to seeing Trulioo's continued evolution in the markets, continued success. And thanks again for making the time.
Pleasure, Steve. Nice to chat with you. I look forward to listening to more of your podcasts. Really appreciate it.